Vice President Lather,
Here.
Director LaHue,
Here.
Director Christensen,
Here.
and President Jaffe.
Here. Okay, there's no public hearing today. Board members, this is an opportunity to remove items from the consent agenda. Any desire? Seeing none. Does anybody have a motion for the consent agenda? Or questions or whatever? Oh, public comment, that's right. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Becky Steinbruner. I wrote your board and asked you to pull consent agenda item 4.6. That's your contract with Eurofin's lab for the analyses and sampling for the Pure Water Soquel project. I'm stunned that this is on your consent agenda, especially when someone from the public has asked you to pull it. I sent you a list of questions, 13 questions. Is anyone going to answer my questions? Because this contract leaves a lot to be desired, I think, in terms of transparency and accuracy, certainly completeness. I have for you, each of you, and I will submit a copy for the record, the predicted CEC removal rates and concentrations through MF, RO, UV, AOP from the secondary treated effluent. This was done for you by Carollo in 2017. These values were anticipated of things that could not be removed. I do not see any proof in the contract that you are going to approve on your consent agenda. This is a critical thing. I don't think you appreciate or understand how much the public is concerned about this. How will the public be notified of the results of this Eurofin? Is Eurofin in Pomona going to do the testing, or is it this other lab in Monterey? It's very concerning that you've allowed this to be on the consent. I have a copy for each of you and a copy for the record.
If you could give it. Does anybody?
Move approval of consent agenda.
I'll second. It was me.
Okay. Are there any comments? I'm flabbergasted, Becky. You need to read these items more carefully. Your questions were ill-posed and you didn't understand the process. I'm not going to take board time for it. Please, is there any other questions? No? You can make a comment.
Just to reassure you, that lab, I did my own investigation, and it's fully accredited to do all the state work that we need. So if there is a problem, CECs, they have the ability to work with other labs to work on that problem. This is a general services contract, and it will, I think you should not worry too much with these questions that are not, they do reflect, not a knowledge of this field, and it's kind of a question of whether we hire the contractor because the company is far more has much more expertise than the rest of us do. And so I would just say, rest assured, we got a really good consultant to work on this problem of what is in our water. And, our past history in Soquel Creek Water District is we take the purity of water very seriously, and we don't hide results of what's in the water.
Well said, Carl. I feel insulted, Becky. I'm drinking this water. My family's drinking this water. The community's drinking this water. Rest assured that I am going to make sure that this is high quality water. You, on the other hand, are not going to drink this water, so I don't know what your concern is. Okay. All right. Anything else? Vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Passes unanimously, consent agenda. All right, so that brings us to oral and written communications. It's an opportunity for public members to speak on any item of interest that's not on the agenda. And keep it within the jurisdiction of the district. And you can speak up to 3 minutes. Anybody? Becky looks like she wants to say something.
Thank you. Becky Steinbruner. I would like to request that Soquel Creek Water District commission another AEM study of the Purisima Aquifer, mirroring the same flight lines that were done in 2017. That was paid for by the Mid-County Groundwater Agency, as you know. I feel it is critical that another AEM study be done, resistivity, to determine the location and status of the saltwater freshwater interface within the district. How else will you determine whether or not the Pure Water Soquel project is working? If you don't have, other than the groundwater monitoring data, the groundwater level data, which Montgomery and Associates has said is improving or stable, but how will you know whether or not the Pure Water Soquel project is working if you don't have an accurate snapshot of where that saltwater freshwater interface is before the project goes into operation, before you start injecting the treated sewage water from the advanced water treatment plant? How will you know? How will you quantify that? And how will you be able to look your customers in the eye and say it's working, unless you have clear proof that this is what the situation was before and this is what it is after? Maybe it's not as bad as what you thought now. And you won't know, other than with the monitoring well levels, which have been shown and stated in the Mid-County Groundwater Agency report to be improving without the Pure Water Soquel project injections. So I request that your district pay for another AEM study before the Pure Water Soquel project goes online to verify that the project is working substantially and has made a verifiable and positive difference that was needed. Thank you.
Okay, Tom, you're going to correct all the things that
No,
were
I'm not
with
going to
that.
try and correct everything. It's just for members of the public that are watching it. You know, one of the purposes of the Mid-County Groundwater Agency's groundwater sustainability plan is to have very measurable objectives, including groundwater levels, chloride levels, and we have additional monitoring wells. So I feel comfortable that we will know whether we've had an improvement, and that's going to be monitored regularly, and the optimization plan will keep working on that as well.
Anybody else? And that, correct me if I'm wrong, the initial study was paid for by the district, not by the GSA.
The original contract was through the MGA partners, but the district was the lead agency in that, so it was within that shared costs through the MGA. But we will be doing testing and annual reporting based on the GSP annually, and then in the 5-year evaluation period.
Right. And a lot of that study was actually the mobilization and demobilization was paid for by Stanford because they were doing a study of marina. So we got a hell of a deal. It's not cheap to do those. Anyway,
Yeah, I'd also like to add that the MGA would be, as a group, they would have a major part of that, the new decision, any new decision on that basis. And it would only be if it really was uncertain. But I think we've been preparing all this many years since the MGA started exactly for this time. So I don't think, yeah, your comment is necessary. I don't believe it's necessary right now.
all right. Any other public comment? Any any board members want to talk at this point? Oral communications? All right. So there are no reports. So we're moving on to administrative business. No conditional or unconditional will serves. And we have a presentation, correct? Did I miss anything?
No,
Okay.
you're correct. Thank you, President Jaffe. I'm pleased to introduce to you tonight Seth Campbell. He was our intern from Your Future is Our Business, and he has a short presentation for you.
Hi, good evening, directors. I'm Seth Campbell. I'm a student at Cabrillo, majoring in design and media. I love art, I love photography, and hopefully I get to show you some of the stuff I did for the district with this presentation. Can I get the next slide? Awesome. These are the two videos I made working at the district. The first one is a how to read your water meter video that I made working with Chris, Rebecca, and Melanie. And sorry, I'm gathering my thoughts here. It was really great learning how to work on the videos in Canva. It's a piece of software I'd never used before. And this is probably the first big video piece I'd ever actually done. So it was a great experience. Can we play the video possibly? It's a short minute, 30 seconds.
Hi, I'm Chris, a customer service technician at Soquel Creek Water District. Your water meter is one of the best tools you have to determine if you have a leak. In this video, we're going to show you how to use your water meter to determine if you have a leak and how to pinpoint its location. The meter is usually located near the street in front of your house with a lid marked water or our district logo. To remove the lid, you can either put a screwdriver or a pair of pliers into the small hole and pry it up. Your meter has a digital screen that shows when water is flowing through it. If water is flowing, an arrow with a plus sign will appear. The top left corner of the screen will show how much water is flowing through it in gallons per minute. However, if there's a really small leak, less than 6 gallons per hour flowing through the meter, it will show 0 gallons per minute, but the arrow and the plus sign will still be there. If water has been running continuously for 24 hours, a water droplet symbol will appear in the upper right corner of the screen. There's also a number that looks like an odometer that you have in your car. This is your meter read and tells you the volume of water that has passed through the meter. Each time the number on the far right of the read goes up, about 1 1/4 cups of water has gone through your meter. If you've shut off everything in your house, but you still see that water is flowing through the meter and the read keeps going up, then you have a leak somewhere.
So it was. And Seth, it's okay. That was the internet problem, not your video. I just wanted.
I know. I just like it makes me laugh. Just like, yep, in front of the board of directors, in front of everybody. It's just like that's what it breaks down. But yeah. Yeah. Anywho, the second video I think you've all seen. It's the Ron Duncan retirement video. ton of fun to work on, really great learning how the Canva software works. And it was really great getting Rebecca and Melanie's help and opinion on all of that. And yeah, you can get the next slide, please. This is the bulk of what I was doing at the Water District in between Pure Water Soquel and everything else. These are a series of social media posts I made for the Soquel Water Creek's Instagram and Facebook and so on and so forth. I really enjoyed working on these because it provided a lot of area to really see like the ins and outs of Canva, which is a software I'd never used. A couple of these have short animations built into them, which we can click on a few of if we want. Yeah. Nothing too crazy, just some fun little holidays, so on and so forth. Yeah, Rebecca and I were messing around with this before we got here, and it was having some issues. Yeah. These were the thank you cards that Melanie had me work on after the Pure Water Soquel. These were really great because I got to interact with the large database of photos and videos from Pure Water Soquel, which is not something I'd ever done before in my other jobs. It also was really great getting to learn about like the people that were there, like learning about Jimmy Panetta and John Laird and the board of directors and like seeing what you guys have done. And it was a really amazing and like a surreal experience to be like, wow, like I got to meet these people. Do you have anything else to say about these? I don't think so. Next slide, please. So for Pure Water Soquel, I think this definitely would be the most memorable experience working at the Water District. Like being able to down the line, like point at this huge project and be like, yep, I helped work on the signage. I took photos. I got to meet the board. I got to meet Jimmy Panetta. I got to meet John Laird. Like it was a wonderful experience and I'm glad I got to do it. Anything else I should touch on with that? Okay. Next slide, please. Awesome. So these were a collection of photos I got to take while I was at the district. I got to tour a bunch of the active sites that the Water District was working on. And let me think what I can say about these. It was really great, like getting to see the hands-on side of the creek, because like I had seen a lot of the like administrative part and the communications and like the behind-the-scenes stuff, but this was like, wow, like that's what the valves look like that's what the purification center looked like, that's what the tanks look like, and like there's a picture next to the photos of the crew setting up a camera to video the crews like taking stuff apart. So if something went wrong, they could go back in and be like, oh, this is where they went wrong. And they could go fix the issue very quickly. And I was like, wow, that's really great. It's really neat. I think that's my last slide. Did I miss anything here?
Seth, who did you go out with to take the photos? Was it Jordan?
It was Jordan. That's right. I was out with Jordan. You have to forgive me. I forgot his last name. Although I think through the course of that day, I ended up meeting everybody because we all met at one of the active well sites, which is that bottom left corner. Actually, it's a couple of those pictures. Yeah, so it's like I got to sit and talk to them about like what they do and like how, and they all really enjoyed it. And it was just really interesting talking to them. To round off here, I have a couple questions to answer. Like I said, the most memorable experience would absolutely be Pure Water Soquel, getting to be a part of that in any capacity and see the facilities and meet the great people that were working on it. And I honestly, if I had more time working with the district, I'm I got to do everything I hoped I would get to do working with the district. It's like I got to do video editing, I got to do photos, I got to do design. It's like I was like, wow, like I got to do all the things I wanted to do. I mean, of course, I only worked for a couple of months, so I don't know if there's more to it. But I was very happy with the stuff I was assigned and I got to do, and the people I got to work with. And I would absolutely recommend working with the district to any other designers. The Melanie and Rebecca, the people I got to work with, were fantastic. Like I said, I was a student at Cabrillo when I started working here, and they were super flexible with my school schedule. It's like if I had like, hey, like I have midterms coming up, it's like I'm gonna be in there. Like, it's like absolutely no issue. Like they were super supportive. And yeah, I think that concludes it. Do you guys have any questions, comments for me?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's great. Good job. Yeah. Keep up the good work. You know,
Thank you.
you're on a roll.
Yeah, and come back and apply for a job with us at some point.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
I would just like to add, I think, again, that Seth was part of our collaboration with Your Future is Our Business. So we've had the opportunity to have 3 interns work with us in admin, water resources, and now with the special projects. And I really appreciate, Seth, what you've provided in terms of some of your work products that you've prepared for the district that we either used while you were at the district, and or we also thought of some of the things that you're working on, like the photographs you'll be seeing and we will be using over the next year. So, I hope that you got a lot out of it. We obviously got things out of it as well. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that means a lot. It means a lot to it means a lot to hear that I did good work. Is my point. But.
Yeah. And again, that kind of work experience that Your Future is Our Business. And I know that several of you are very passionate about, supporting education and supporting the youth, to be able to provide not just experience in your journey as a career path, but also the exposure of working with a special district, local government, meeting people. That's all part of the process and the journey of becoming, who you become in your professional career.
I also want to say just thank you for always asking for more. You don't see that a lot anymore where, like a lot of people just go about their work, but they're not going to keep like, do you have another project or what else can I do? And I really appreciated that in you. You have a really good work ethic.
I appreciate that. And it was all interesting. It was really great to see like how the district functions as a whole. I think I made this comment to both Rebecca and Melanie. I've lived in Soquel my entire life at this point, and it's like growing up, it's like in elementary school, they have like the people come in, they're like, oh, here's like precipitation and like the water cycle. And it's like, oh, cool. And then it's like at 19, I now get to be like, wow, like that's how it all works. Like this is all the moving pieces that make this work the way it does. But yeah, if you guys don't have any other comments, I think I'm good here.
Seth, maybe you can come up to the front, you and Becca, and then the board can stand behind, and then we'll take a picture and we'll provide that to Your Future is Our Business.
Sure, absolutely.
Where do you want us? Thank you. All right. So is there any public comment on that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. It's 7.3, receive water capacity study and consider adoption of resolution 24-15, adopting water capacity charges. Leslie?
Okay, I've got a few slides just to go through real quickly on the water capacity charge study. Some of this is information that you probably already know from past studies, but we'll just go through it real briefly. Hit the next slide. So kind of the approach, does that little bar slide wide over to the right or anything?
Oh, thank you. For 6 months, we just left it like that.
For 6 months, we just moved it around the screen. Ah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So the approach to setting water capacity charges, there are a lot of approaches out there. Historically, the district has always used a hybrid approach, and that's a component of both the buy-in method and the incremental method, and that's kind of combining those two together. That buy-in approach, they call it also the equity method, and that's a valuation of our existing system, the water system, the infrastructure that we already have in place as of the time of the study. There's no future expansion project identified in a buy-in method. Now, in the incremental approach, they also call that the marginal method, and they're looking at the value of expanding the capacity of your existing system. And so we've used those two in the past because we obviously have all of the water infrastructure that we already have in our existing water system, but we also had that expanded capacity in a supplemental supply project that was out there. Now that we have identified the supplemental supply project that's coming online, that incremental component for us kind of goes away, and we're left with just the buy-in component of a water capacity fee. One more slide. Is it not working? You might have to scroll down because it's a PDF, not a... Ah, there you go. So in terms of the valuation approaches, to determine the value of an existing system, since that's what we're working with now, you can either look at original cost, which is very simple. It's just taking what did we pay for the assets that we have in our water system. Very simple, but going back to a water system goes back to 1963, obviously the original cost approach is not going to capture all of the investment we've put in the system since that time. So then you can also look at a replacement cost, which captures all the costs of the water system and increases them, and captures those costs due to inflation, and you use cost indexes to bring it to present value. And then that will capture the replacement cost of all of the assets in the system. So we are looking at a replacement cost method, but we are using a replacement cost method less depreciation. And by adding in that less depreciation component, we're capturing the replacement cost of our water system, but we're also acknowledging that there is some wear and tear on our existing assets. They are older assets, and so they are not valued at exactly what we would replace them at today. So that original cost or that replacement cost method plus depreciation gives us the most accurate picture of the value of our water system. So they call it RCLD, replacement cost less depreciation, and that's the one we're using in our study. It's also the most common approach to valuing a water system. And so there's two different cost indexes that can be used to bring the asset cost to present value. The first one is the Engineering News Records Construction Cost Index. We have used that in the past. We use CCI for a number of different things. We've used it for rate studies. We've used them for water capacity fee studies. We use them for forecasting our future CIP projects. So CCI is common, but it captures a very wide, broad swath of construction costs. It captures tons of different costs that we don't necessarily use in a water system.
It comes out monthly. Like I said, it's in broad use, but there's a new one kind of coming into play and being used more and more frequently, and it's called the Handy-Whitman Index. And it focuses in on utility-specific costs, the cost of PVC pipe, the cost of saddles and gate valves and things that we actually use in a water system. It comes out biannually. It's starting to be more widely used. It started on the East Coast, and the use of this system is moving west and being used now in California. So when you calculate water capacity charges, you start with the system value, which is that replacement cost less depreciation, and you're using one of those indexes to bring it to present value, and that's your system value. And then from that, you back out any grants you've received, because that's not something we've paid for. We're not going to ask our customers to pay into a portion of a system that we didn't pay for ourselves. So you back out any grants, and then you add capital reserves, which is the cash that we've got held in reserve for repair and replacement of the system. And then from that, you deduct your outstanding debt principal, because the debt payments are being funded through water rates. So you don't include them in the valuation of your system assets. And then you arrive at your net system value. And when you take your net system value and you divide it by your system's equivalent meter units, you get to that unit cost per meter unit. And that's what we use then to calculate the fees. That equivalent cost, or that equivalent meter units, is taking all of the meters that we have in the ground and multiplying them by their capacity, and then dividing that by all the meters we've got across the board. You come to a base meter cost, or one equivalent unit, and we've tied that to our 5/8 inch meter, since it's the most common meter we have in our system. And then everything else is a factor of that equivalent meter unit. So that's where we get to our two calculations, the capacity fee calculations using the construction cost index, and the capacity fee calculations using the Handy-Whitman index. Now, included in our system valuation this time is what we call a mortality curve, and it's taking all of our system valued assets, and instead of looking at their value less depreciation based on accounting methods, we're now looking at it with a mortality curve added, which extends the life of the assets by about 20%. And it better reflects the fact that we use these assets long after they're fully depreciated through accounting methods. So that's why you've got a mortality curve that we've been using. So when you take a look at those fee schedules, you can see that the proposed fees for CCI start with a base equivalent meter unit cost of $6,487. Our current fees are $22,250, so that's a significant decrease of over $15,000, or 71%. Now, if we do this same calculation and we look at it using the Handy-Whitman index, which captures utility-specific costs, a water capacity charge for a 5/8 inch meter would be $10,670. It's currently $22,250, and so that would be a decrease of 11.5. Go ahead, Rochelle, you got a question?
Can I ask you why the 4-inch meter is more money and everybody else's is less?
It's just a factor of the capacity of the meter. You can see where the equivalent meter units we've used, a 4-inch meter capacity is valued at 50 times the capacity of a 5/8 inch meter. So it just has to do with how we've calculated equivalent meter units. Go back one slide for me real quick.
It doesn't show an amount.
Here it doesn't under the CCI, it doesn't. They all decrease across the board. Yeah. Go
back up one more again to the next, the next slide, the Handy Whitman. That looks like a 9% increase for 4-inch. I'd have to check with the study on that calculation. That is an outlier.
I looked through the study and that was the number they had, and it just didn't
Seem right. We can confirm that with the consultants and get an explanation for you on that. Yeah. So you can see where the two different indexes value the water system at different rates and provide you a different capacity charge in the end. So let's go to the last slide, and this last slide is showing you our capacity charges in comparison with some of our neighboring agencies. It's really difficult to compare water capacity charges across agencies because everybody's system value is so wildly different. Obviously, a groundwater agency is going to have a very different system value from a surface water agency, or somebody who's got a sewage in addition to it, or somebody who's got a water purification facility like ours now. We'd be a very different cost profile from some of our neighboring agencies. So this is how we would look in comparison to them if we were to adopt either one of these new indexes. So before you tonight are some opportunities to look at those two different indexes and give us some feedback on which one of the two options we should include in our resolution. So before you tonight, we do have Resolution 24-15, Fixing Water Capacity Charges, and amending Schedule J, which is our schedule that captures water capacity charges. But we have two different versions, by motion, two different versions for you. Version 1 would be to adopt based on the Handy Whitman Index, and version 2 would be to adopt based on the Construction Cost Index. And number 3, of course, is take no action. And if you've got any questions about either of those, you can feel free to ask.
Let's do public comment first. No.
Thank you, Becky Steinbrenner. I found this very interesting, and I was really happy to see that in both methods, the rate would be reduced. I have heard many people within your district upset about the high cost of trying to build an ADU and the cost of a new service. And so I'm happy that you're going to reduce that cost for those people trying to provide affordable housing for people in our community. I also had that question, Director Lather, about why the 4-inch had a 9% increase when all of the other connections had a decrease. I apologize. I didn't see a date when this new water capacity fee would be changed, when that would be effective.
I think it's January 1st.
January 1st? Thank you. And so how will the district explain that to people who just paid the higher rates to get in line for their building permits, and then January 1st it would go down by half or more? Has the district been advising people to hold off on perhaps applying for building permits because of the anticipated change? And I also had a question looking at the Marina Coast. They have a flat rate, $5,715 per EDU. I wonder if the district looked at how that was arrived, how they did that, and maybe something could be applied here within the district. Thank you, and thank you for helping me with the date on that.
Okay. No other public comments? All right, I'm going to open it up to the directors. Any questions, comments?
I mean, it seems to me that using an index that is more in line with what the costs are actually for that type of construction we're having to do makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with that because, like pipelines, the cost of gas of oil is, goes up and down or seems to be going up, and that's what they use for making those
For the CCI.
for the plastic pipe. Yeah, so in the index it's for specifically.
The handy one.
Yeah, the Handy Whitman is a better choice for us because it reflects the kind of costs that we have that can go up when other things aren't.
Gotcha.
And there are other agencies using the Handy Whitman Index. Placer County Water Agency used it in their recent study. Roland Heights, El Toro Water District, La Cañada Irrigation District. So it is being used more frequently here in California.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say that the Handy Whitman Index provides a reliable benchmark for the costs of infrastructure projects. It's adjusted for inflation and regional economic conditions. And by using the Handy Whitman Index specifically designed for public utilities, the district can better justify these capacity fees as directly tied to the costs of providing service. And this alignment actually helps defend the structure against challenges as well. So it seems pretty smart. I did have a question, and that is, can we have future capacity component? Is that an option?
We don't have a future capacity project identified. Now, if we did identify costs associated with expansion, then we could add that incremental component back in, but we don't have any at this time.
Carla, anything?
No. I think that I discussed the approach with Leslie last week. It was a very thorough discussion, and I appreciate that it's always a dilemma when we have to change the way we calculate this, something like the buy-in to the system. But at some point, we have to make that change, and the people who got started previously just have to understand that.
And we have been telling our customers since June that this was coming. So it's not
They wanted to
unexpected.
delay it until 6 months. So I think we're,
It was in the staff report.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I like that approach too. It convinced me.
So in the memo, it talks about an annual adjustment to this.
Correct. Our current water capacity study, we adjust it annually in January of each year to keep pace with inflation by the March CCI index. If we were to adopt the Handy Whitman DAGDEX valuation method, then we would adjust it by the Handy Whitman index that comes out closest to January 2020, or January of each.
It comes out biannually.
Comes out biannually. So I'm not sure which months it comes out, but whichever month falls closest to a January 1st adjustment would be the index we would use.
And then in the memo, it talks about be adjusted annually by the adopted index until a new water capacity charge study is performed. So what would trigger a new study in your mind?
It's best practice to do these every few years. I mean, we do a rate study usually a little more often than we do a water capacity charge study. But when the value of our water system begins to change significantly and we want to make sure that we're aligning with the actual cost of the system, then we should do a new study.
So Jennifer's question about if there was new capacity.
Then we would do a new study, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can make a motion, but I think it should, in the motion should be that we check that 4-inch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it could be that the 4-inch in the current had a problem, but
We will confirm that.
so
The multiplier seemed off somehow.
Yeah.
The multiplier in both of them appeared to be 50, but I will determine why that is and make those adjustments as necessary.
Okay.
I'll make the motion for number 1 to, for resolution 2415 with the, using the Handy Whitman index with the extra request to make sure that the fees are correct for all meter sizes.
And I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait, it's a resolution,
Yep,
so we have to do individually, correct?
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call.
Director Balboni,
Yes.
Vice President Lather,
Yes.
Director LaHue,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
and President Jaffe.
Yes. All right, so that brings us to 7.4 now.
And 7.4 is me as well.
Okay.
So this evening, we're bringing to you a review of our water consumption fiscal year to date and evaluate the January 2025 increase. So we've presented you some information here this evening. Included in this packet was a copy of our last rate study, so you have that as well. And then some of these tables are pulled right from our Prop 218 notice. But we did adopt in February 2024, we adopted a new rate study. In the first year of that rate study, the revenue increase was projected to be 10% annually. And subsequent years, starting in January 2025, were to be a 12% annual increase. And Director LaHue requested that we bring this back to evaluate our water use year to date in comparison with where we thought we were going to be and identify if we were still on track for the scheduled rate increase. So I've provided you some tables. You might want to scroll down to some of that. Excellent. Thank you.
What page is that on?
This is on page, I just printed out 375.
Oh, I see it. Yeah. 375.
I've provided you some tables. These tables are available monthly in our finance status report if you ever want to double check and see how we're continuing to track against our forecasts. But probably the best picture of this is looking at the fiscal year 2023-24 graph, because it does show a lot of ups and downs, which is the blue line, which is our monthly consumption compared to budget. But in addition to that, then you've got your cumulative over the entire fiscal year, and that's the gray line. And you can see that when we got to June of 2024, we were within less than a percentage point of where we expected to be in our annual water consumption. So water consumption can vary widely from month to month, but cumulatively, as long as we're sticking within about 5% of where we expected to be, then we're typically on track with our budget projections. Because water consumption is a factor of the tiers as well. So we may be on track consumption-wise, but if a lot of that consumption is happening in Tier 1 and we expected it to happen in Tier 2 or Tier 3, then it could throw us under revenue. If it's predominantly happening in Tier 2 or 3 and we expected it to be in Tier 1, then that could throw us a little over our revenue. So we are pretty much on track where we expected to be revenue-wise this fiscal year. The other component of our rate adoption is where we anticipated being from a reserve fund perspective. And you can see, looking at this graph, figure 4.3, that the first 4 years we were projected to not fully recover our targeted reserves. We were under our reserve limit up until 2028. So even being a little bit over budget, that simply helps us recover those lost reserves maybe a little faster, a little sooner than we would have anticipated, which isn't, that's a best practice from fiscal management perspective as well. And then one of the other graphs that we could probably look at real quick quick here is also in your finance status report. It's not in this memo because it's in the finance status report. But if you look at our records on the finance status report, you will see an analysis every month of our tiered water bills and where we fall in comparison to where we expect to be. Perfect. Just a little bit more. So if you looked at the bill consumption report, you can see by tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 where we're tracking against budget. And then if you go down to the following page, you can see overall what our revenue projections are, including our annual service charge or our monthly service charges. You can see what our annual projected water use is all the way down the next page, I think. And you can see that we're still tracking very close, even on the revenue collection side, we're tracking very close to where we expected to be fiscal year to date. So this is an informational item that we've brought to you this evening. There is a motion, if you are interested in changing the adopted or approved rate increase for January 1st, 2025, there is the motion to adopt something other than the 12% increase. Otherwise, it's informational only.
Right. Public comment?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. The graphs were interesting in terms of showing where the consumption is in terms of the budget. I've never seen that kind of comparison. So I wondered why October consumption was so much higher. Did I read that correctly? That it was a lot higher, sharply increased from what had been budgeted. So help me understand that what I've just said is correct. I'm not saying misinformation. And I've been curious to know also that as the Gunnison well is developed, that used a lot of water. Was that factored in to the consumption? It didn't really look like it had been in terms of customer billing and things like that. But is that part of the jump of the October value? I still hear from many people that they're within your district, that they're having trouble paying their water bill. And so to increase it by 12% is going to be a hardship. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Board, any questions?
For one, I just wanted to thank you for going through doing this, because I'm the one that asked for that, and it was really helpful to see how we're doing. And I think that it's important to maintain our reserves for our, if we don't maintain reserves, then we end up having to pay more interest if we have to borrow money, and we're just not as solvent. So it seems logical to me to just keep things steady. But I personally wouldn't mind doing this again next year. I know that it's a hassle, but I feel like, what if there is a significant amount more income, we're meeting our reserves better, and we don't need to raise it as much? Now it seems like we should stay on target, but I think that can change. So I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Go ahead. Oh, wait. Who was first? I didn't know.
Ask for permission first.
But you were, okay. Go ahead, Rochelle.
Yeah, I was a little confused about the resolution because there's no compelling reason for us to believe that we have more than enough income right now.
Right.
To give a rate decrease. I mean, if there was compelling information, like you said, next year, that's one thing. But I was actually kind of confused. I'm like, why is that there? There's nothing saying that we've done so well that we can do that.
Well, just like Tom, I think it's good to revisit this. We had a number of assumptions that went into the rate study and setting the rates, and maybe something had changed.
I think there needs to be a paragraph in there saying, we do not see any we do not have any information that indicates that we should reduce the rates because we're at the right place. There's nothing in there saying that. It just kind of all of a sudden there's this, and you can lower the rates if you want.
In the memo?
Yeah. Yeah, it would, I was just confused.
We could do that as a motion.
Right, but then below it, it says, these are the things you can do. And one of them is lower the rates if you want.
I think if that wasn't on there, you couldn't.
It's
make a motion.
always a
If it was
board.
informational only.
Right,
We
it
couldn't do
is.
anything.
Right. So it always is the board's purview. You did adopt 12% rate increases for
Yeah, and
3 years,
It
so.
may just be better, especially from someone outside looking at it, to say, we do not have any compelling information to say that we would recommend, a rate decrease at this time.
Okay.
But if you want to do it, I guess you can. I mean, I don't know. It just kind of looks like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe you weren't at the meeting when Tom requested it.
yeah,
Could
it was,
be.
That was a while ago.
the purpose for this item was to review the water consumption and decide, whether we could afford to lower the 12% rate increase. And unfortunately, I think, thanks to this presentation too, to just remind us, I don't think there is any justification for
Correct.
reducing the
And
rate at this point, but it's worth looking at it again next year. I
Agreed.
think we should keep close, we should follow it closely.
and you can review monthly where we stand in the finance status report. Some other components that do play into this a little bit as well is not only are we looking at our projections from the rate study, but we also are looking at our actual financial performance when we publish our annual comprehensive financial reports. We have not posted an unrestricted net gain in position for almost 4 years now. So
Could you please interpret that?
yeah, so we have posted, when you look at a gain in net position is the equivalent of your income. If you were looking at an income statement for a private business, you would look to see, okay, how much money did they make this year? And it would be that gain in net position. Now, we are making a gain in net position, but it is all in the acquisition of capital assets.
See.
It's nothing, it's either restricted purpose revenue or it's a gain in capital assets, but we are not posting an increase in unrestricted assets or unrestricted. We're not posting an increase in our cash position necessarily.
Right, and
in what we're making. Yeah.
And our operating contingency fund is less than what we want it to be too.
Right. We are below where we need to be for reserves, for operating contingency reserves as well as capital facilities reserves. Correct.
So it's not happening now, but in the future, if we had higher interest rates for our savings, that would be something that would add to it. Is that which part of it would be?
Oh, in terms of gain in net position?
Yeah, like, our whatever.
Our investments?
Yeah, whatever our investments are.
Our gain in net position would be enhanced by greater revenues than expenditures. Right now, most of our revenue gain is being put into capital assets.
But if we had, is it revenue gain if you get higher rate of
Yeah,
interest?
yeah. But that's not huge. That's usually, $250,000, $500,000 a year is typically what we make.
It used to be 20 years ago, but
Yeah.
rates have gone down.
The other thing, when you're talking about borrowing money, is they do a credit rating on you. We have 2 credit ratings out there right now, Moody's and Kroll Bond Rating Agency, and they each do an annual review of our financials. Part of that is looking at rate studies and what has been adopted for the next so many years, and whether the board has approved those, and whether the community has the political support to enact those rate increases. So that goes into our credit rating for borrowing as well. So, and that's looked at annually. So there are other components other than just how we're tracking against the water study.
So I agree with what's been said, and that I would like to lower the rates, but there's not evidence to do that. And if there were evidence, I'd also be very cautious, because if you lower the rates for 1 year, it's compounded in the next year's rates as well. So we don't have to do anything.
Right. The second bullet point is only if you decided to do something other than what you had already approved at 12%.
Right. And I think the minutes will show why we did this. And like Rochelle said, that we concluded that we weren't able to at this point.
And I think Leslie and I can take your input related to how the motion was set so that next year we can maybe come back and present it in a way that the motions aren't as confusing.
Okay. Did we do public comment?
Yeah.
We did, yeah. Okay. Want to make sure that we did. All right, so that moves us to the last item before closed session. 7.5, approve change to the methodology to determine meter size and water capacity fees for accessory dwelling units subject to the district's separate meeting requirements. All right, and this is
Thank you.
Shelley.
Good evening. So new construction accessory dwelling units are defined in attachment 1 of the memo. That's the only remaining type of accessory dwelling unit that by law the district can require to be separately metered from a primary residence. When metering is required, we have to comply with state law, Senate Bill 13, which says that water capacity charges have to be proportionate to the proposed burden of the ADU. And we've been meeting that law through our 2008 restricted meter policy. And then we determine meter size and corresponding water capacity fee based on square footage. For instance, a new construction ADU of 640 square feet or less qualifies for a 5/8 cents restricted meter and pays a water capacity fee half that of the 5/8 cents meter. ADUs bigger than 640 require a 5/8 cents meter and pay the associated 5/8 cents water capacity fee. To more directly meet state law, staff's proposing to base both the meter size determination and the water capacity fee on fixture count alone, so switching from square footage to fixture count. That means ADU conditional will-serve applicants would need to submit their building plans at the time of application, and to determine the meter size, staff proposes using the water meter sizing worksheet that's included as attachment 3 to determine the total number of fixture units. ADUs with up to 15 fixture units here would pay, and that 15 fixture units correlates to the maximum flow or capacity of 10 gallons per minute, which is what's provided by a restricted meter. So they would qualify for that restricted meter. And ADUs with 15.5 fixture counts and up to 30 require a 5/8 cents meter with a maximum flow of 20 GPM. So that's how we would address determining the meter size differently. And then to determine the water capacity fees, we're also proposing a different approach. Instead of just either a 5/8 cents capacity or a 5/8 cents restricted, we're saying that we should use a ratio of ADU fixture units relative to that of a 5/8 inch metered connection, which is 30 fixture units. So if you take a look at the memo here, an example would be an ADU that has 18 total fixture units calculated using that worksheet. And that would be equivalent to 18 divided by 30. So that customer would pay 0.6 or 60% of the 5/8 inch, the new 5/8 inch water capacity charge starting in January. Let's see here. So changing this methodology also requires revisions to our restricted meter policy, and those changes are shown in attachment 4. Here, oops, we don't have attachments. Index, so, we do have them. Okay, so we're proposing changes to incorporate this methodology and also do some cleanup and clarification because this hasn't been touched in quite a few years. And again, tonight, the motions that you have to consider are approving proposed methodology for calculating meter size and water capacity fees for new construction ADUs, and approving the proposed corresponding changes to the restricted meter policy. Or you could also provide other direction or take no action.
Thank you. Public comment?
Thank you, Becky Steinbrenner. I'm glad that your district is reviewing your ADU policy here. I have a question because I have watched an ADU in my neighborhood that's within your district have to install a new service separate. But recently they've also had to go in and install a dedicated fire service. The workman told me that that'll all have to be just dug up in a couple of years because the laws are changing and it all has to be above ground. That aside, I'm wondering about the number of fixture counts. Does that include fire sprinklers? Is a fire sprinkler counted as a fixture unit? Thank you.
Okay. Board? Any questions, comments?
Just a quick comment. It seems the fixture counts better reflect the actual water demand, and they promote equity, and they actually better comply with this SB 13. I also wanted to note that Scotts Valley also has been using the fixture count for a while.
Okay.
Quick question. What would be the advantage for somebody to have a restricted meter if they're just paying based on a percent of 30 fixtures?
The restricted meter, the monthly service charge is half that of the 5/8 inch meter. So there's a big savings there on an ongoing basis. And also the capacity fee would be less.
I think this is an admirable effort to make some sense of the metering system because they're kind of moving with all this, the changing ADU laws that are coming out. I think it was mentioned in another item about the unfunded mandate to, it's all of a lot of public agencies within our own area are facing the same thing on different sides of it. We're on the water side, but they're the planning side here, actually in Capitola, they don't know when anything's coming down. When someone's building an ADU, it just shows, it can show up there. It's just saving costs that way, which is good, but we have a different thing in managing water consumption. So I think this is a good approach.
Rochelle, anything?
I've counted I've counted fixture units for years, so yeah, it makes sense. Do it for sewers.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list, and Becky did ask about whether on the list was fire, and it's not on the list. Sprinklers. Oh, lawn sprinklers.
I don't think it's common for ADUs to have to install a fire service.
Gotcha.
My understanding.
Okay.
That there's been a lot of laws that have changed that as well. And I believe if the primary home has a fire service, and I don't know, this might not be accurate, but if the primary residence has a fire service, then the ADU may have to, but otherwise they don't.
I mean, it doesn't.
And that's my understanding as well, but we can confirm.
Okay. Hi, Josh.
And the fire service too, it doesn't, they don't pay capacity, or they don't pay, that's right, they don't pay capacity.
Because it wouldn't be used unless an emergency. So it's not like an ongoing water use. And
So it
one of the
wouldn't be
purposes of
relevant to a water capacity calculation, in other words.
Yeah.
And they would have a separate fire service, so that would determine the meter size.
And fire sprinklers are sized to meet a certain flow capacity for the sprinklers to work. So that goes through its own calculation.
I still think individual metering has a benefit in conservation in the long run.
And I agree with you.
And I agree
But
also.
all our policies are going away from conservation being something we value. Our rate structure no longer values that.
What does,
Not as much. Not as
Helps
much.
in billing, though, if you're charging, your ADU to pay for their water. It's a benefit to have it because then you know how much they use.
That is true.
And if ownership changes.
Yeah, no, there is benefits to a meter.
Yeah.
But that we're going to be talking about that at another meeting. Now we're just talking about a fair way to do water capacity for ADUs and whether or not we allow a restricted meter. So an obvious question is the 15 is not arbitrary.
No,
The 15
this
unit,
table
it's
comes from the Uniform Plumbing Code.
Okay. So this is, the idea is that the 10 gallons, if everything was going at once,
The maximum
then
capacity.
you'd have 10 gallons flowing. But I have a question. What's the difference between a shower and a tub shower?
I guess it's just a stall shower, or like instead of having a tub, because tubs use more water.
Yeah, I think that it's the same fixture value, but
It is.
maybe they're just trying to
Showers
list
too.
the options.
Showers 2 and a tub shower is 4.
Oh, because tubs use a lot of water.
I mean, if somebody fills the tub, it's
down
going to be
there.
definitely
Oh, I totally get a bathtub should be a
it's the capacity. But sometimes they only have one. Like, they have one bathroom, so they got to either have a shower by itself or a tub with a shower. These are ADUs frequently just have one bathroom.
Right. So because there's a tub there, they could fill it. Okay. All right. So it's not that somebody's going to have a shower and a tub shower usually.
Although that might work for some people.
Yeah.
I mean,
You could. I mean, in my house, I have a tub with a shower and I have a shower.
But you're not an ADU.
Yeah, but that's
But you could.
That's where it comes from. It came from the Uniform Plumbing Code. It's not just for ADU.
Doesn't make sense to me.
It makes sense to me, what he's saying. It's true because I've been into many new ADUs of my neighbors, okay? They have a stall, then they only can take a shower. But if you have a bathtub and a shower, then you have the option of taking both. Or you could do it at the same time. So it needs to be charged more.
I totally agree. If you're taking a bathtub, it should be charged. If you're taking a bath, it should be more. It's more water.
Yeah. So that's why.
That's what a
It's the
bathtub
capacity.
is.
Yeah.
It's
So you
really
could turn on the tub, and you could turn on the shower. So I didn't mean to digress, but it
how about if I make a motion that we approve both motions
Yes,
1 and
thank
2?
you. I second.
Move forward.
I'm willing for you to do that.
I'm making that motion.
And a second from Jennifer.
Yeah, she's into that.
So 1 and 2 have been moved. This is not, there is a need for, since we're changing the policy, for a roll call, correct?
Josh, can you weigh in on that?
I believe a voice vote is okay because we're just amending the policy by motion.
Okay. Before I vote on it, I want to know what the 640 square feet, why does that keep popping up? Because it's popping up here in commercial units and irrigation areas. So what is...
That still is relevant for other small units like apartments, multifamily apartments, or commercial units. And I think the basis for that was in the restricted meter policy from 2008, where they kind of equated that to fixture counts. Like they correlated the size to fixture counts.
That being us? Them?
Yeah, I wasn't here when you guys did that, but
Yeah.
the board and Ron and, yeah, I think Ron.
So it's uncanny that it shows up in other places. So I'm wondering if there's something in code somewhere.
And there was also, with the water demand offset program, we had the demand factors for various types of development.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that 640, the water demand associated with small residential units like apartments, corresponded to something of about 640 square feet. So that's my understanding, is that it was all a correlation.
Okay. And it just seems very arbitrary to me, a 640 versus 639 or 641.
Well, actually, they mentioned that. Under this, we expect that more ADUs over 640 square feet may qualify for a 5/8 restriction meter than under the current policy because of the fixture.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thanks for answering that question. I guess we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. That brings us to closed session. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And if you want to
Right.
take public comment on closed session, we can do that.
Oh, yeah. Public comment on closed session. Becky?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I am the pro per litigant in many of the cases in item 8.1, and I'm acting for public benefit. President Jaffe, you did make the comment earlier that you were insulted. I'm sorry, I didn't intend at all to insult you. I'm just raising questions that many others are raising. And maybe it's time to have a town hall meeting with people and clear up some of this misinformation, you call it, because there's a lot of concern out there. I'm not the only one, and I've never been the only one. I've only been the one that had the time to go to the law library almost daily for 5 years to file pro per cases. Now, I want to let you know that because of the judge's decision in case 907, I did dismiss on my own case 1651 because of what the judge had decided. It would have been futile to fight it. I still feel that I had a case, But I want you to know that I've been very cognizant of trying to save money for the ratepayers. I've created some of the most recent documents rather than asking Best and Krieger to do it to save money. I also want to say that case 566 is very relevant. And, you know, one thing I wish I would have said during your rates is that your rates include paying for basin sustainability that is not happening. Pure Water Soquel is not online.
Thank you,
And the debt is huge. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, any other public comment?
I would just like to say welcome back to Emma. This is her first meeting, and we're glad to have you back.
All right, then we'll adjourn to closed session.